Hey everyone, Skull902 here. 2 years ago I made a video about why I love the first Ice Age film. However, I didn't touch on the sequels. Back in the day I liked the second and third films, but when the fourth came out I had zero interest, same for the fifth. They just looked like they were gonna be terrible, especially the latter. However, since I did a video on the first, I thought it might be interesting to reassess my opinions of 2 and 3, as well as see 4 and 5 for the first time. Who knows, I might be in for a surprise. Before I watched the sequels though, I saw the original again after missing out last year. To sum things up, because I don't want this section taking too long, I still think the original is a great film that has a fantastic story on the surface with some nice complexities underneath, along with well done humor and likable characters that had good development. Maybe some of that opinion is rooted in nostalgia, but I stand by what I said 2 years ago. If I were going to recommend any of these movies, it'd be this one. A classic to be sure. The effects of global warming on a camp run by the herd are beginning to show, and its members have only 3 days to escape an inevitable flood caused by the ice dam melting. On the way, they run into Crash, Eddie, and Ellie, who, as Sid would put it, is a she-myth that thinks she's a possum. The two herds will have to learn a bit about and get used to each other on the journey, as they're not only racing against the flood, but prehistoric sea creatures have been thawed out and they're on the hunt. The film does a great job of immediately setting the mood. They made a good deal of money on the first movie, and they showed it right at the starting bit with Scrat to showcase the improved animation and visuals. The music, now done by John Powell, is different in tone but fits the mood of the movie quite well. What I think Ice Age 2 does best is its jokes. I was cracking smiles and chuckling at even the dumbest of them. This movie's sense of humor has charm. The characterization took a bit of a hit though. Sid's not quite as much the lovable dork he was in the first movie, what with his constant reminders of Manny's loneliness, but he does make up for it a bit in other parts. Of the new characters, I really like Ellie. She's sweet, if a bit clueless for a fair chunk of the movie, and Queen Latifah gives her such a friendly quality. Crash and Eddie don't make quite as good of an impression. I liked them well enough by the end of the movie, but it legit took me right until the end pretty much. That being said, Sean William Scott and Josh Peck did a good job with their voices. As for the overall plot, it's a serviceable story. As good as the comedy was, perhaps they focused a little too much on it because while the serious bits weren't bad, big points go to the scene where Ellie realizes she's a mammoth. They were just kinda there, and the subplots about Sid wanting respect or Diego's fear of water just kinda appeared and disappeared as they pleased. Also gotta point out some great continuity. When Scrat temporarily goes to heaven, a choir sings to him that's composed entirely of dodos. I really liked that callback. After this watching, I ended up liking the movie even more than I did my first couple times seeing it. Ice Age 2 I'd say is a solid film, not nearly as good as the first, but still good, or at least not one I think anyone would be easily bored by. While Diego decides it might be best for him to leave the herd and Manny is tending to Ellie's pregnancy, Sid feels somewhat out of place until finding 3 eggs in an underground cavern. Once they hatch, it's revealed that they were the babies of a Tyrannosaurus who takes her kids and Sid back underground to a dinosaur-inhabited land. The others venture out to get him back with the assistance of the wacky weasel Buck. But as they look to reunite with their friend, the Great White Beast watches on. The only film in the series I saw in theaters, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, is one that's still good, but you can kinda tell they just came up with the plot after remembering that dinosaur gag in the first movie was a thing. It delivers on the fun. Sid's bits were really nice, as well as Manny's interactions as a bumbling, concerned father-to-be with Ellie. The plot, though kinda ridiculous, is good, but there are some problems, like Diego's troubles and leaving the herd not really being touched upon a lot before it's resolved without much conflict, and the confrontation with Rudy at the end feels like an afterthought, as if they finished writing a draft and then went, oh yeah, we forgot to put him in. The comedy bits with Scrat and Scratay were also nice and funny, with the squirrel briefly busting a nut addiction to try and settle down once finding romance. Otherwise, the cast does a good job as per usual. Special mention goes to Simon Pegg as Buck, who gives such a lovably insane performance. John Powell returns to do the score, which fits perfectly. The visuals don't look much improved from the second film, but that's to be expected, though when they were going for something epic, they really delivered. This movie I think is more so one that you can just kinda sit back and have fun with. If you're looking for something more emotional, you might want to go with the first two. Scrat causes the continents to drift apart, again, and the split inconveniently separates Manny from his family after he and his daughter Peaches have an argument. Now it's up to the original 3 of the herd, along with Sid's senile grandma, to navigate the ocean and reunite with the others while having to contend with Captain Gut and his scurvy crew. In short, the movie's just okay. The plot works alright enough if you ignore some serious issues like how Manny's able to steer an iceberg with a tree trunk, Captain Gut breaking off an iceberg of his own with literally just his body, or Lewis traveling through ice like it was dirt. It was kinda like the writers got stumped on how to continue the story in certain places and then went with the first solution that came to mind. We also have the returning problem of subplots being resolved without much put into them, with Peaches learning the importance of being herself. The characters are a mixed bag. I liked Peaches and Lewis, but the other teenage mammoths as well as Captain Guts' crew didn't leave a great impression. Shira's a particularly bad case. Whereas Ellie was introduced to further Manny's character arc and Scratay was just for comedy, it feels like they wrote Shira in purely for the sake of having a love interest for Diego. The humor didn't get me as much, but there were still some jokes that made me have a good laugh, and credit where it's due. Granny calling out for her pet Precious had a nice payoff. The cast once again did a fine job with their characters. I may not be a fan of Gut, but Peter Dinklage makes for a fantastic villain. The score, once again done by John Powell, was also good. There was a slight amount of improvement with the animation, I feel, but there was a more noticeable difference stylistically. Instead of going for epic-looking crane shots, sometimes they went with ones where it looked like they were shot by a cameraman, and it worked pretty well. I dug those shots. As a whole, I'm sure this one could be loved by kids, but to me, it's just kinda there. This is fucking stupid. Scrat activates the same, presumably, UFO encased in ice from the first film and goes into space. Hijinks ensue before he ends up sending multiple meteorites careening toward Earth. After Buck tells the herd about an ancient hieroglyphic prophecy, yes really, they set out to a mountain range to stop it. Trouble awaits though as a dinosaur family looks to seek revenge on Buck for foiling one of their plans. In short, the movie sucks. That's what happens when you base the entire thing on a simple sight gag from one of the earlier films. It's not even an entertainingly awful or infuriatingly horrible film, it's just bad. The plot's contrived and has a multitude of problems, such as its complete stretch of a premise, the villains once again being kind of an afterthought, yet another glossed over subplot about Peach's conflict with her parents, despite the fact that Manny already accepted that she was growing up in the previous movie, concepts like the whole youth-preserving magical crystal cave inside an asteroid, yes really, a character introduced purely to be a love interest again, and so on. For the most part, this film's sense of humor fell flat. There were a few jokes I laughed at, but it was far and few between. They really upped it on the kitty unfunny toilet humor, and none of Scrat's bits got so much as a chuckle, which is a first. Given the material they had to work with, the actors put in good performances, particularly Simon Pegg, who sounded like he was having a lot of fun. New composer, same critique. John Debney is the man behind the music this time, but it remains fitting and well done. The animation looked a fair bit better, the gravity scene with Scrat standing out in that department. If it wasn't obvious before, I just didn't like this one. Maybe the kids would like it, I'm not sure. I just thought it was bad and mostly kinda boring. And those are my thoughts on the Ice Age sequels. We have 2 good ones, an okay one, and a bad one. Sad to see though that the series progressively got a little worse with each installment. Overall I'd say it's mostly fine, especially the first 3. With the note the franchise left on, I'd like to see a 6th film that acts as a finale. If they tell a simple but deep story like the first, they might have something. Seriously, if you're gonna keep going back to the well of things that were in the first movie for ideas, why not have the herd reunite with an adult Roshan? I think that has potential. And totally up to write at 20th Century Fox, hit me up, lol. That being said, this was a nice look at the series, and I'm glad I at least gave the last 2 a chance. I found a new appreciation for the Meltdown, and, while it was just okay, Continental Drift did technically exceed my expectations. Hope you enjoyed this review. Maybe next year I'll look at all the short films. Until then, I have been Skull902, thank you for watching, and have yourselves a wonderful holiday. Also, am I the only one kinda weirded out by this shot of the hippo fuck thing whatever in the second movie?